Hello, friends. I hope you're in the finest of fine fettles today. And I'm just going to continue on with chapter 6 of Frederick Victor Dickins' Magical Carpenter, translation from Japanese. All right, so first thing I have to do is share, which I will do, share the document. There we are. Chapter 6, The Mechanical Boat. So I will read this. Here we go. Chapter 6, The Mechanical Boat. How the stern rope of the mechanical boat, constructed by the craftsmen of Hida, snapped and parted. Yamabito and Murasaki. Parted as in separated them. As already stated, Suminawa went down to Shimosa with Funanushi, where he chose a quantity of logs of suitable timber, which he bound together in a raft to be floated down the river. The two then returned, and to while away the days of waiting for the arrival of the raft, Suminawa betook himself to an upper chamber of Funanushi's mansion, carrying with him his equipment of magic tools, and there busied himself with making a variety of objects. The girl Murasaki, meanwhile, after her all too brief and fruitless meeting with Yamabito, was sunk in a grief that threatened to snap the precious thread of her existence. She besieged Matsumitsu with entreaties to obtain her. Oh, just one word with him. But Matsumitsu, however much he tried to think of some way of satisfying her desires, seeing that the order of the house was very strict, could find no irregular way of sending a maid or servant outside to take a message to Yamabito. So, too, no one could reach the inner apartments of the mansion, for what with gates and doors, access was so well barred that there was not a chance of winning a secret entrance. Thus he found himself, to his great distress, altogether useless as an intermediary between the lovers. The girl's brother, Saomaro, who knew the state of her heart, tried occasionally to persuade his father to give his sister to Yamabito. But Funanushi would by no means consent, and so the days passed by sorrowfully enough. One day, Suminawa came down from his upper chamber and said to Funanushi, I have built a boat by way of experiment to which I have fitted a Chinese mechanism. Shall we try it? Funanushi at once ordered his men to carry the boat to the river's edge and launch it. Although a small boat, built to hold 5 persons only, it was as comfortably arranged as any ordinary boat. Funanushi delighted in going on the river to fish, and was much pleased with the boat. Tomorrow, he cried, we will pole up and down the Miyato stream and amuse ourselves with rod and line. Matsumitsu heard of this project and secretly conveyed instructions to Murasaki as to what she was to do, saying he had prepared the way for an interview with her lover. The next morning, Funanushi got his tackle ready and invited Suminawa and Matsumitsu to accompany him. Before going on board, he called one of his servitors, who understood boats, and told him to get his poles ready. But Suminawa, who was standing by, cried, Anyone could build a boat to be oared or poled by men, but I have devised one provided with a mechanism that makes the boat move of itself without the aid of any men at all. This announcement filled everybody with astonishment and delight. The girl, Murasaki, then asked her father to be allowed to go with the party, but he shook his head. Women are not wanted on river parties, and refused. Matsumitsu, however, intervened. This is not an ordinary boat, sir. The young lady's wish is not unreasonable. There will be no stranger in the boat. Might she not perhaps go with us? Well, said the old man, persuaded into consent, let her go. And so they took her with them. In front of Funanushi's house flowed the famous Sumida River. That's a river in Tokyo, isn't it? Or Edo, as it would have been here, I suppose. From ancient days, this has been accounted a great river and has been celebrated among men ever since Narihira the Ason wrote the verse Iza koto toamu. again, 'tis the river mentioned in the Sarashina journal as the Asuta flowing between Musashi and Shimosa. Of this journal, there exist many printed texts, but all are wrong in describing the river as the Futoi. This is not at all, for in the Tokaido itineraries, the descriptions are so wrong as to put before what should be put behind. Those who know the old books will recognize the error. There are also rivers called Sumida in Dewa and Kii, as we know from ancient poems. Kii is Wakayama Prefecture, I think, or the peninsula. And in Suruga, too, as the commentaries tell us. This likeness of name has caused many misapprehensions of the old poetry. Thus, in the anthology, we find a stanza, crossing by night the hill of Matsuchi in the dry bed of the Sumida River that floweth through Iozaki, how can I sleep on lonely couch? This is the Kii River and has been taken to be the Musashi one, so much so that at a later time, the very names Matsuchi Hill and Iozaki have come to be bestowed upon villages in the neighborhood of the latter stream. But as I am telling a mere story, I will not pursue the matter further. Well, Suminawa's boat was brought to the bank of the Sumida and the party went on board. Though small, the boat was roofed and so was comfortable for ladies. So here are the notes. Note 1, which was about the Narihira. Ever since Narihira, sorry, one of the Rokusen 6 poets. Narihira was one of the Rokusen 6 poets, grandson of the Mikado Saga, flourished in the 9th century. He was celebrated for the beauty of his face and form as well as for that of his verse. Number 2, Izakoto Toamu, the verse Izakoto Toamu. Now one would fain inquire. And number 3, the anthology is the Manyoshu, the famous anthology of poetry, classical poems. See my primitive and medieval texts, which is by Dickens, presumably. My would be Dickens himself. He's the editor here. All right, I will reread the last part of the bottom of the page. Well, Suminawa's boat was brought to the bank of the Sumida and the party went on board. Though small, the boat was roofed and so was comfortable for ladies. But as there was not much room, no servants were taken, and Funanushi, Suminawa, Matsumitsu, and the girl Murasaki were the only persons on board. Suminawa went to the stern and handled what looked like a peg, whereupon the boat began to move slowly forward, more easily than if oared or poled. Saomaro and some others stood on the bank watching the boat and clapped their hands in admiration as it moved along. Funanushi, letting his line drop in the water, began to fish and was soon happily occupied. A bamboo sake bottle was opened, and each took a draught, and so the whole party began to enjoy the excursion. I should myself like to fish, cried Matsumitsu after a while, and, reaching for the bait basket, stumbled and let it drop into the stream, which rapidly bore it away. Funanushi, seeing his bait gone, exclaimed, "What shall we do now? We had better go ashore and dig up some worms." "So be it," said Suminawa, rising and handling a small peg, with the result that the boat moved towards the bank. Leaving Murasaki alone in the boat, the rest of the party, Funanushi in front, went ashore and, climbing a lone knoll, began looking for worms, but none could be found just there. Matsumitsu, who had contrived the whole thing, pointed to a spot some way off and suggested it as a likely place for bait, and so led all the party in that direction. Where the boat was left, the bank was overgrown with tall reeds and rushes, so that anyone coming through them would be hidden from sight. The girl, who was in Matsumitsu's secret, kept her eyes riveted on the jungly growth, yearning to descry her lover. After a while, she heard a rustling among the reeds, and sending her eyes in that direction, caught sight of her beloved Yamabito's face showing among the tall stems as he made his way towards her. Sorry. What's going on here? Sorry, I've just lost the page. Yes, I think that's it there. Was it not delicious? His clothes all dank with dew. Springing to her feet, the girl cried delightfully, "Oh, you have been waiting for me." "Yes," was the reply. "Since this morning, when I came here, I have been following the boat. That is how I came to be in this wretched plight, forcing my way through these reeds." He showed his fair hands as he spoke. They were torn and scratched by the reeds and spotted with blood. "How dreadful," cried the girl, "that you should suffer so for my sake. But come into the boat quickly. Matsumitsu will warn us of my father's return. Come, come." But as the boat lay several feet from the bank, Yamabito could not reach it. When launching it that morning, the servants had forgotten to attach a stern rope. The girl therefore unwound her undergirdle and, tying one end forward, threw the other to Yamabito. "Pull the boat nearer," she cried. He seized the end of the girdle and, exerting his strength, pulled accordingly, and the boat neared the reeds. Now at any moment her father might return. However much they might desire it, another interview might be difficult to arrange. Moreover, they longed to know each other more closely and interchange their lovers' vows. So the beating of their hearts and the fluttering of their breasts were intelligible enough. With some exertion, Yamabito hauled the boat closer in and had got in near enough to the bank, as he thought, when suddenly the girdle snapped in the middle, and Yamabito fell back among the reeds, while the boat swung out with the impulse several fathoms into the stream. Yamabito sprang to his feet without delay, but only to see the boat drift down the river. The girl, almost distracted with the disaster, gazed towards him with a look of stupefaction. Her lover dashed madly through the reeds, but could not keep up with the drifting boat, and at last they could only lift up their voices and weep together. The upper waters of the river, known as the Iruma, flow from a distant source and are very rapid, and as, besides, a north wind was blowing, the boat flew seawards, with the swiftness of an arrow sped from the bow. Agonized at the thought that so small a boat, when it reached the open sea, must assuredly founder among the great waves and go to the bottom as wreckage, Yamabito cried, "'Tis all my fault, my love will be destroyed. What a terrible thing I have done!" Then he rushed on again wildly, but the reeds and rushes hindered him, and ere long the boat was lost to sight, and the distracted lover could only stand there, wringing his hands in anguish and shedding floods of tears. To go back, while all these things were happening, Funanushi, leaving the knoll, had collected a goodly store of worms for bait, and returning to the river, looked for the boat, but found that it had disappeared. Startled at this discovery, he gazed around, but could discern no trace of it. "The waves must have borne it away while we were absent," he muttered to himself, as he ran along the bank distractedly, calling loudly, "Murasaki! Murasaki!" amid his tears. Presently Suminawa came up, and seeing no sign of the boat, and Funanushi running wildly along half mad with his fears, went up to him, and laying his hand on his sleeve, said, "Do not be alarmed. The boat has been blown by the wind downstream, but there is nothing to fear." "But my only daughter is in the boat, and she will be drowned. How can I help being alarmed?" "No need," answered Suminawa with a smile. "I took warning from the horse I made that ran away with Matsumitsu, and this time so constructed the boat that it cannot go more than a league or so without turning back upon its course. Do but wait a little." I see. He's built in a return mechanism to the boat or something. Somewhat reassured, Funanushi sat down on the bank and waited. Matsumitsu, too, who when he found the boat had gone felt a chill at his liver, was comforted by Suminawa's assurances, but kept his eyes fixed on the water, and after a time descried a number of men poling a raft upstream. This raft consisted of the timber ordered by Funanushi in Shimosa. The raft was hailed and boarded, and on looking around from it, a boat was perceived. without boatmen, making its way upstream from the lower reaches of the river, and in the bottom of the boat, the girl Murasaki was seen lying down and weeping. The raft was accordingly brought alongside, and the girl removed and cared for. She did not know that the boat was returning homewards, but was so persuaded she was drifting away, she knew not whither, that she thought of destroying herself, when, unexpectedly, she was thus rescued, to the great joy of everyone. Her wonderful preservation was set down to Suminawa's skilful craftsmanship in Chinese mechanisms, which was greatly admired and praised as the party hastened homewards without further delay. When they reached the house, and the mother and the rest of the household had heard the whole story, they were greatly astonished as well as overjoyed at Murasaki's safe return. She went to her chamber to lie down, saying her head was aching, but her thoughts ran thus. From last spring I have been sick almost to death with love for Yamabito, and on an occasion I went to Asakusa to meet him there, but unfortunately even when I did meet him, I had hardly glanced at him when I had to leave. Today I thought a better fortune would be mine, and indeed was able to see him face to face, but alas! The girdle broke with the movement of the waves, and we were again parted to my unutterable grief. The gods and Buddha must have withdrawn all their grace from me. I fear we shall never see each other again. What have I to live longer for? With such sorrowful thoughts was her mind filled, as she lay there in her chamber, ending with the reflection, perhaps in my misery I might for once talk with my father about my love. If he cannot grant my wish, then all must come to an end. So, making up her mind, she sought her father and made her entreaty to him. Without waiting for my father and mother's command, I secretly sought to obtain a husband, a most dreadful misdeed on my part. But may I dare to ask pardon, and say that over and over again I seem to feel that such a union must have been ordained in some previous existence. Perhaps you will have pity on me, despite my foolish conduct, and give me to be Yamabito's wife. I know I forget what is due and proper in saying these overbold things, but the affection you have shown me this many a day has encouraged me. Still I know I have too far ventured upon your love for me. A shower of tears fell from the girl's eyes as she spoke, rubbing her hands imploringly together and prostrating herself before her parents. Her mother was greatly affected and cried, "My daughter, do not weep so," and turning to her husband continued, "You will not altogether refuse her request, sir, I hope." But Funanushi made big eyes and shook his head from side to side, and frowning on the girl, exclaimed, "Young as thou art, thou knowest well that the Takeshiba family and our own are unfriendly. There are plenty of men in the world, yet thou choosest to fall in love with a son of that family. What does all this mean? To say nothing of the Takeshiba family being so poor that they can hardly provide, I hear, for a single day's smoke from their chimney. To give my daughter to such a family would bring great disgrace upon my house." It's almost a kind of Romeo and Juliet, Montague and Capulet situation, isn't it? "Thy Yamabito's mother, too, hates me, saying that I cheated her in respect of some property. For such insinuations from that quarter have reached me. How can I let my daughter enter that family? Besides, thy choice of a husband without consulting me is disgraceful behavior. It is good saying that women should not run after men. It is a good saying that women should not run after men. A girl conducting herself as ill as thou hast is no child of mine. Change thy ways, and that quickly, or I will expel thee from the family." Funanushi had worked himself up into a passion of anger, and almost threatened to beat the girl, but her mother intervened and led her away to her chamber, trying to comfort her with soft words and caresses. "I will speak to your elder brother," she said. "We shall find some way, I hope, out of this trouble." But to all her mother's affectionate words the girl could make no reply. She could only weep. Even from her chamber she could hear her old, cross-grained father still raging, and almost lost her senses in her despair. "Now my father has quite made up his mind," she murmured. "There is no hope of my becoming Yamabito's wife. It is hardly worth while to go on living with nothing but misery to look forward to. I would liefer die, I would." When I was so ill in the spring, I thought I should die, but in a strange way, enough the illness abated, and to the man I loved, I was able to show that I loved him too. But hardly for a passing moment have I had so much as a glance of his face, at his face. However, to have seen him at all will remain a pleasant memory of this world. With such thoughts was her mind filled and disturbed as she recalled her lover's face, seen among the reeds and rushes amid which he had forced his way towards her. She pictured to herself how disturbed he must have been when he saw the boat drift away he knew not whither. Did he himself get safely to his home, and, unknowing her troubles, was he now sleeping? Was he by any chance dreaming of her? So she lay the night through, distracted with grief and weeping floods of tears, ample enough to bear the ferryboat across the neighbouring Sumida, nay, to float even the stone image men say is to be found at Asakusa village. The stone image. The allusion is perhaps to the tiny stone image of Kannon, the goddess of mercy, said to be preserved at the temple, having been fished up in the 6th or 7th century. Right. And then we have the illustrations, which you can see here. And this one is Murasaki waits in the boat for Yamabito, and using her undergirdle for a stern rope, tries to enable him to haul the boat in. See page 138. In the distance are Funanushi and his party looking for bait. Okay. So here's on the left, we've got Murasaki in the boat. And here's her undergirdle as a stern rope. And this is Yamabito hauling the boat in, or trying to. That's Funanushi over here on the left side, and his party looking for bait. All right, very good. And the next and final one is the anger of Funanushi on his daughter requesting him to allow her to become the wife of Yamabito. Oh gosh, look at that. He's very angry, this man, Funanushi. And this is what mother and the daughter. Yes. All right. Good. So we've come to the end of this. I shall stop the share. Thank you very much for continuing to watch and listen, or simply listen to my readings. Of course, since there are illustrations at the end of each chapter, that part should be watched. Of course, otherwise it's a little bit hard to imagine what's going on. So anyway, I will see you soon with chapter 7. So goodbye for now.